Ravens Nation. This news caught everyone by surprise. Michael Pierce, one of the pillars of our defense, has decided to retire, and this changes a lot for the team. We're losing a true tank on the defensive line, a guy who did the dirty work and held off opposing offenses like few others. But what does this mean for the Ravens? Who can step up to fill his role? And will the defense still be as dominant without him? Stay with me until the end, because we're going to talk about the impact of this farewell, Pierce's legacy, and what's next for Baltimore. Go Ravens. Man, this is one of those news that makes every Ravens fan take a deep breath. Michael Pierce, one of the pillars of our defense, has announced his retirement, and this shakes things up on the field. He wasn't just another guy in the rotation. He was a true wall in the middle of the defensive line, the kind of player that made offenses think twice before trying to run up the middle. Without him, the Ravens lose a run-stopping specialist, someone who occupied blockers and freed up the linebackers to make plays. It may seem like just one player leaving, but the impact could be huge. Beyond the technical aspect, there's something a lot of people forget: leadership. Pierce was a respected veteran in the locker room, someone who knew how to fire up the team and bring the right energy in crucial moments. Younger players like Travis Jones looked up to him as an example. Now, without that presence, the Ravens defense will need to find a new leader to step up. Who will be the guy to keep this defense united and make sure the team remains a fortress against the run? That's a question the coaching staff needs to answer quickly. Another concern is how this defense will adapt. Justin Madubuike is a beast and is coming off an incredible season, but his playing style is different. He's more explosive, focused on getting into backfield and pressuring the quarterback, while Pierce was a guy who held everything down with sheer strength. This means the Ravens may need to tweak their defensive scheme or find another player with similar traits to fill the gap. Without a dominant presence in the middle, interior runs could become a problem. And if we're talking about legacy, we can't ignore Michael Pierce's journey with the Ravens. He came in as an undrafted player with no hype and built a solid career, leaving his mark on the defense. But will Ravens fans remember him as one of the franchise's greats? Michael Pierce is the kind of story every football fan loves to see. He entered the NFL as an undrafted player. No one expected much from him, but through hard work and dedication, he became an essential part of the Ravens' defense. From his very first year, he showed he was different, playing with incredible strength and a natural instinct for closing gaps in the middle of the line. Even though he wasn't a stat sheet superstar, he did exactly what was needed, shutting down the run, occupying blockers, and making life easier for the linebackers. His peak in Baltimore came between 2016 and 2019, when he formed a dominant duo with Brandon Williams. Together, they turned the interior of the Ravens' defensive line into an impenetrable wall against the run. Running up the middle against Baltimore in those years was nearly impossible, and much of the credit went to Pierce's relentless work. He was the kind of player who didn't always make the highlight reel, but those who understood the game knew just how valuable he was. After a brief stint with the Vikings, he returned to the Ravens in 2022, but his comeback didn't go as expected. Injuries limited his impact, and he couldn't play as much as he wanted. Still, last season, he had a special moment, securing the first interception of his career in the final week of the regular season. It was almost like destiny had reserved a symbolic farewell for him, closing his journey on a high note. But now comes the big question: how will the Ravens handle his departure financially? Because beyond the on-field impact, Pierce's retirement also affects the team's salary cap. When a player like Michael Pierce retires, it's not just the team on the field that has to adjust. The financial side also takes a hit, and in the Ravens' case, his retirement leaves a $2 million dead cap hit for 2025. That might not sound like much compared to massive NFL contracts, but in a league where every dollar counts, every bit of cap space needs to be managed wisely. The front office now has to decide how to handle that amount, whether to reinvest in the defense or use it to strengthen other positions. This financial impact also raises another question: is it worth bringing in an experienced replacement for Pierce, or should the Ravens trust the players already on the roster? If they go after a veteran in free agency, they'll have to carefully assess the cost-benefit, because finding a player with similar skills won't be cheap. On the other hand, betting on a young player is risky, since replacing someone of Pierce's caliber isn't an easy task. Another important factor is that this change comes at a time when the Ravens are making major financial decisions. They've already spent big to keep Justin Madubuike, and they still need to bolster other areas like the secondary and receiving core. Managing the salary cap intelligently will be crucial to keeping the roster balanced and competitive for next season. And speaking of replacements, who can step into the role that Pierce played so well? Do the Ravens already have the answer on the roster, or will they have to search the market? All right, we're past the halfway point of our video, but I just noticed you haven't left a like yet. That's super important to help YouTube keep recommending my content to you, so I can keep bringing you more Ravens updates. So go ahead and hit that like button. It's free. Thanks. Now let's continue. Now that Pierce is retired, who will take over the middle of the defensive line? The first option is Justin Mattibike, who is coming off an incredible season. But as we mentioned, he has a different playing style. He's a natural pass rusher, someone who excels at pressuring the quarterback, whereas Pierce was a guy who held the line in the run game. So if Mattibike becomes the main name in the middle, the Ravens might have to adjust their defensive scheme to compensate for this difference. Another option is Travis Jones, who is already on the roster and has a skill set more similar to Pierce's. He's strong, has a physical presence, and could become the new anchor of the run defense. However, we haven't seen him take on this role consistently yet, and now is the time to prove he's ready to step up. Besides him, Broderick Washington could also see an increased role, but the team still needs to evaluate if he can handle the responsibility on his own. If the team isn't fully confident in these options, free agency could be a path to consider. There are always veteran players available who can fill this role, even on a short-term contract. But then, the salary cap situation comes into play, as we discussed earlier. Is it worth spending extra money to bring in an experienced player, or should the Ravens trust in the development of the young players already on the roster? And even if the Ravens find a replacement, nothing erases what Michael Pierce did for this team. And to prove that, we just need to remember the moment that capped off his career in the perfect way, his interception in Week 18. If there's a special way to say goodbye to the NFL, Michael Pierce found it. In his final game of the regular season against the Steelers in Week 18, he recorded the first interception of his career. For a defensive lineman, that's extremely rare. And for Pierce, who was never known for this type of play, it was almost like a farewell gift. One last moment for fans to hold on to. The scene was incredible. He read the play perfectly, grabbed the ball out of the air, and cemented his name in history in an unexpected way. The entire team celebrated, and fans knew that moment meant more than just another highlight. It was the end of an era of final recognition for a player who always gave everything he had on the field. That interception perfectly symbolizes Michael Pierce's journey. He was never the guy with the flashy stats or the biggest spotlight, but he was always there, doing the dirty work and being an essential part of the defense. This final play was a cherry on top of a career built on effort and dedication. Now, with Pierce's departure, the Ravens enter a new chapter on defense. The big question remains: who will step up and carry on the tradition of having a dominant presence in the middle of the defensive line? Now, with everything we discussed, it's clear Michael Pierce's retirement leaves a huge void in the Ravens' defense. He was an essential piece in stopping the run game, a true pillar who brought strength and consistency to the defensive line. His departure doesn't just impact the team's performance on the field, but also the leadership in the locker room. The Ravens must find a worthy replacement to keep their defense dominant. The big question now is, who will step up and take on this crucial role in Baltimore's defense? If you also believe that the Ravens need to act quickly to fill this gap, share your thoughts in the comments and show how important this position is for the team. We can't let a bad decision affect the future of our defense. Until next time, Ravens Nation.